For over 40 years, Father Michael Pfleger has led the southside predominantly Black Catholic Church in Auburn Gresham. As pastor, Father Michael Pfleger has advocated for the poor, disenfranchised, and the least of these. He has been on the front lines fighting injustice, racism, and economic disparity. In the Auburn Gresham neighborhood he has called home for the past 4 decades. 5 months ago, Father Pfleger saw his world turned upside down with allegations of misconduct from decades ago. Forced to leave his home, he sat in isolation, unable to speak out on his own behalf while his name and ministry were questioned and attacked. After 5 months, Father Michael Pfleger was cleared of any wrongdoing of abuse, fully reinstating him as senior pastor. After being unable to speak about the allegations, Father Pfleger spoke with the Chicago Defender about what the past 5 months have been like, how he plans to help his congregation heal, and what his plans are for the future. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I kind of want to start in January when you first are told that there are even allegations. Like, what's the first thing that's going through your head when they're telling you not only are there these serious allegations, but you got to go and you only have 2 hours to do it?
To be honest with you, I was in shock. I was numb for like the first 24 hours. I was really numb because all of a sudden I'm called in and I'm thinking I'm coming in to just talk to the cardinal about something. You know, we talked many, many times. And he says to me, there's a allegation has been made. And that came in on yesterday, the day before. We've got to do a thorough investigation now. And we've reported this to DCFS and all these things have been done before I knew anything.
Right.
And, I guess I didn't understand how the process worked because I felt like if there was an investigation made, that initially, you know, they look to see is there something to this or not before they take action. And that's not how it works, you know. So I'm just told, you know, you've got to step away from Saint Sabina, and we'll begin this investigation. It's already been reported to the state and to everybody else, and you've got to find a place to stay and find some lawyers. I said, well, when does it all happen? They said now. And I said, you know, I gotta tell my staff. I gotta tell my family. I gotta tell, you know, I gotta let somebody know what's going on. So literally when I'm on my way leaving there, you know, I don't even remember the drive home, to be honest with you. I remember getting on the phone and calling here and saying, can you have the staff meet in 30 minutes, have everybody come together down in McMahon Hall, staff and cabinet. I have to talk to them right away. So I come back, I go in there and talk to them, and I'm real emotional, and I break up, and then I throw some things in a bag and trying to figure out who I'm going to call next. So I'm going to do, and I'm calling lawyers that have been my friends and have worked with me on the billboard and other issues in the car on the way to go stay someplace.
Right.
So it was really. I remember that night. You know, Danielle, probably was like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting in this apartment and no lights on, just sitting in the dark saying, what the hell just happened? My whole life just got taken from me in a matter of a couple hours. I woke up that morning, while the things I thought I was going to do that day, and excited about this new year. This was January 5th. I was excited all the things that I had called and spoke to the church about doing, even in the midst of this pandemic. And everything is changed and turned upside down in a couple hours. So I'm sitting there that night just wondering what happened. Now what? What's next?
Well, this comes out, and obviously it's a complete storm on the news, social media. Everybody's kind of talking about it.
And international.
The
I mean, I was getting calls from around the world. It was on CNN, so
Yeah,
I got I
like
got calls around the world.
you're seeing all of this happening. You're
Yeah,
seeing everybody state their opinion. Um, and even your accusers are doing the press. Everyone's talking about this, but you are not allowed to say anything outside of a couple of sentences in a statement through your attorneys.
yeah.
To be silenced while watching your name and your ministry and your work get just raked through the coals.
Yeah.
What is going through your head as you're watching that and you literally are being muzzled?
That was what initially was so painful because, first of all, you know me. I speak what I believe, and I speak out of things that I feel strongly about, and I don't hold back. And now it's my life, and I was told that I could say, my innocence and verify I could do that, but I couldn't give the names of the people. I
Mhm.
couldn't do anything about them. I couldn't do anything about um, the information from my side. I was just told you can declare your innocence and say that, but all the rest of it, and you're told that by the lawyers, the diocese, told that by my lawyers, saying, at this point, this is what we've been told. Well, you can and cannot say, and so you're paralyzed by the fact of saying, wow, your name is being dragged through the mud internationally, and you're watching the interviews of the accusers and watching and reading the stories. I mean, to see, for instance, I remember reading a story in I think it was the Tribune saying, like three-fourths of the whole story was everything the accusers were accusing me of and all this and their lawyer and all the rest. And then there was maybe 3 lines of Father Pfleger has declared that he's innocent of this and thing like. So what do people think reading all this and then seeing a line Father Pfleger has said through his lawyers he's innocent?
Right.
You're
Exactly.
it's there's no even there's no
There's
even
no balance.
no balance at all. And that's painful. And then they have that continued. I mean, there were several days in a row where that continued to be on the news, and I'm watching it every day, and getting angrier and feeling biased of this. And you're thinking like, here's 46 years of my life here being shelved
Hmm.
because this is now how I'm being defined.
Yeah.
And I had to really grow to the point of saying, listen, people who hate you are going to always hate you. People who, are always a little shade with you, they're going to use this to now justify why they don't like you.
Hmm.
People who
Right.
know you,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to trust 46 years of lived experience to override a story in the paper or a glimpse on the news trying to redefine you. So I felt I had to get to that point again, saying, you know what? I have 46 years of lived experience, and let that be my defense. The other part of it was, though, I don't, I'm not some like hidden secret figure. My life has been lived in public.
Yeah.
I haven't been moved from church to church to church and around. My life is very public, and thinking so. If there was this side of me going on in 46 years and all this public life I lived, this would not have come out. People would not talk about it,
Hmm.
and I just got to trust that my life has to speak for itself. But it was hard. It was painful because you're watching your name being assassinated in the public.
Yeah.
And as a reporter, unfortunately, in many of the news, not doing what we're doing on and sitting down for questions and substance. It's 30 second, 60-second on the news. It's who's got the exclusive, who has something new to say, and very, very, very little investigative work.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what's the flavor of the day. And so you feel treated so unfair by the way the story was put out there.
I wanted to talk to you because you touched on it a little bit. You know, you have throughout your career have supported and befriended people that have been deemed controversial.
Yep.
And you've been extremely loyal to them, sometimes at the expense of people attacking you as a result of it.
Absolutely.
When all of this happened, was that loyalty returned to you, particularly by Black church leaders?
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Farrakhan reached out in the beginning and throughout. Jeremiah Wright, beginning and throughout. And many pastors reached out personally. Publicly did as many. I think people watch how I got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
What I connect with publicly,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and how it might harm them if somebody challenges them their support. But you know, the final call from the beginning was very supportive. And the ministers spoke out. In fact, at the rally we had down at the church had down the pastoral center, Mr. Ishmael Muhammad was there and talked about the support that that he gave me and stood with me. You know, Harry Belafonte from day one, Spike Lee from day one, Nick Cannon from day one. So people who had reputations at risk, Cornel West from day one, they came out and spoke and supported me. Reverend Jackson from the beginning, you know, spoke out and was very supportive. And there were some individual pastors that were very supportive. Some privately, but not publicly. And I get that. I mean, Daniel, I had letters from pastors who wrote me and said, I'm with you, I support you, but I hope you understand now why I don't speak public and issues, because when you do, you're a target. And I don't want to be a target.
Wow. I was thinking about that because I know you've had so many different schools of religious thought, schools of thought that have come to the church to preach, to speak.
Yeah.
And I just really wondered about the level of support that you received. But we always talk about, you know, the difference when you're going through something of having people who boldly and publicly support you versus those that, you know, kind of stay in the background and say, I got you, but I can't really, you know, I can't really say that publicly.
And that's a really key point that you bring up, because I've watched this for years. I remember in the basketball league, you know, some years ago, when we were fighting the racism of the team. We were the only Black team in there, and I called it racism and spoke out about it, and we fought it and said we weren't going to join if they weren't going to come play at our gym as well as their gyms. I can't tell you how many white people in some of the Beverly and other areas wrote me notes, would see me at the stores and pull me aside and say, listen, I'm with you, I support you, what was done was terrible, and I think it is racism, but I can't say this publicly or my neighbors will turn on me. And I think that is, we'd often talk about, you know, in the violence, the code of silence, and the police department code of silence, and people in the street who don't share because of the code of silence. But there's a code of silence about truth and about support. And people they're pressured by the culture of the day, by their neighbors, by their friends. And we're often talking about young people, but it's with adults, it's with leaders. There were many people that I thought of as friends and that I had walked with and shared with, who I heard nothing from the entire time. And you know things like that. You remember things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we live unfortunately in a day where people are careful about their public support or their public truth telling.
Mm.
I think that's why we have the society that we have today. You know, look at in government, look at all the Republican, elected officials in the Capitol who won't come out and be public about January 6th.
Right. Right.
And there's video, there's testimonies, everything. We are in my mind, a very dangerous day where we are more careful about what people think if we say something, and therefore silence the truth and silence our support for things we say and for people we say we believe in.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dangerous day.
One of the things I thought was, I paid attention to the timing of all of this. And not only did these allegations threaten to silence you permanently, but it also threatened the community in that there's so many resources and funding to take care of the community that were at risk. You think there was some intentionality in the timing of all of this, not only to stop what you're doing in your career, but to stop the flow of resources into the Auburn Gresham community?
Well, I let me say, I'm actually going to share this a little bit on Sunday. I believe there was an attack against who we are and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you want to silence like the programs we do, I mean, we all through the pandemic, St. Sabina never closed.
Right.
Our ARC never closed. Our youth facility, as you know, was open for kids every single day when all the other facilities were closing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my things I want to share with on Sunday is the fact that we this is an attack on the church when you want to attack a ministry or what it's doing or its voice or its challenge or its prophetic stance in things, issues. What do? You go after the head. Take out the head, and then you can break up the power.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think this was much bigger than just an attack on Mike Pfleger, although I do think there was a move to silence me. But
Absolutely.
I do also think that it was bigger than that. I think it was a bigger message to say about spokespersons and about voices and about a church who we want to send a message.
You really got to see in your absence your leadership team and the faith community of St. Sabina. You saw the lessons that have been taught over the years really come through them. And when they made a decision to withhold the monthly dues that are held to the Archdiocese, I remember sitting like, that is something Father Mike would have done. So you really got to see your leadership team really step into, get information, for lack of a better word,
Right.
and approach it the same way you would if you were still in that position.
Well, and one of the things, Danielle, that I've always taught here and try to teach and try to do is I always say that I'm not trying to build up a church of followers. I'm trying to build up a church of leaders so that every day members of our church, whether at their workplace, in their school, on their block, at the marketplace, become, as the theme of this year was, invading it with truth and justice and love. And there are, like you say, there's times when things happen that you get to see. You don't really know what people believe until you see the test. It's the test that shows us who we are.
Yeah. One of the things I think that really came out of this for a lot of people, particularly people in the faith community, St. Sabina, Black Catholics, you saw this unveiling of this disconnect between the Archdiocese and the community. And people started paying more attention to that. Being downtown across from the Bentley dealership, how connected are you really to what's happening in this community? Now you're reinstated, but there's still Black Catholics who are just like, you know what, that left a bad taste in my mouth. And I don't know if I want to, even if I support Father Mike and the faith community of St. Sabina, I don't want my money to go to this institution that I feel not just historically uh, has had a torrid relationship with Black people, but in very recent months. How do you tell supporters and your own members, how do you help them reconcile that between the business of the Archdiocese versus the ministry that you do with St. Sabina?
Well, I think everything is there's a larger umbrella of everything, but there's also the
Mm-hmm.
local actions and activity and formation that you know I think the people basically, I mean, like even in politics, I think they can disagree with what's going on in government here, but it's what's going on in their neighborhood. Is the garbage being picked up? Is the street lights being kept on? Is it safe? And I think that people got to understand. I have problem with every denomination,
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
Christian denomination. I have problems with of things that I disagree with. Um, I'm not. My allegiance is not to a denomination; is to Christ. It's to my faith, and I live it out in different places. So my thing is saying that if you believe in what we're doing here, even while you may have challenges with the Roman Catholic Church, um, your commitment is to here, and your funds and your tithing and your donations are to support what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of, tragically, I think there's a lot of particularly young, but I think old too, folks who have said, I'm out of religion. I'm so disgusted with what religion is or not is in society
Right.
today. And they've
Right.
walked out. But and they say, well, I believe in God, but I just don't want to be a part of any religious experience. And I've always said to them that our belief in God needs to have a family where it's lived out, acted out, and together with. That's part of our faith. Part of of the Bible is the relationship of with other people. And so while you may not, you know, be in line to the allegiance to the denomination or to the religious figure thing, but find a group of people where you can at least live your faith out with and walk with. And I believe people can find places where they can live that out. Um, and so, I mean, it's like people that get disgusted with government say, well, I'm not voting anymore. No, vote for who you believe in and don't vote for who you don't believe in, but you don't walk out of the experience because of your anger with the institution. I just think that's really important. I mean, I think we've got to, because we're relationship people, and we've got to find places and people and groups that we can connect with. So you may be mad with Church of God in Christ or Pentecostal or Roman Catholic, but find a group of people, a faith community somewhere that you can say, I support them and what they believe. Search until you find that group, because I think that is important, not to walk away from it all and become this independent, disconnected world. Because
Mm-hmm.
guess what? Evil connects.
Yeah. All the
Evil
time.
connects. And racists can be of different class, of different supremacists can be from all over, from rural area to high rises, and they connect.
Yeah.
There's a bottom line that we're gonna stand together with this. And I think good people and righteous people got to connect with some folks too, because what did Malcolm X say? It's not that we're outnumbered, we're out organized.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. And so if you're going to organize, you must be willing to step over some of the stumbling blocks you see to find a group of people I'm going to stand with.
The Pew Research Center did a whole study on Black people and faith.
Right.
And one of the things they highlighted was this kind of exodus from the church, particularly by young people. And when they interviewed them, they cited the reasons you spoke of earlier, the lack of the church's voice when it comes to social justice,
Mhm.
environment, gender identity, LGBT.
Yeah.
They cited all these reasons, the silence, and not even, some churches have played it safe where they just say, we won't say anything. We won't come
Exactly.
out against or for. We just won't say anything. And young people are saying, you know what? That's hypocritical. We don't like it. I'm
Yep.
out. And how do you get people to understand or bring them back into that sense where the church is the foundation of all of these movements that have happened from the beginning?
Yeah.
um, how do you bring people back into a faith community that feel disillusioned?
Well, I think one of the things is that that group has to take a voice and be a strong voice in those faith communities. I remember for years I used to get letters from when I was very critical, and I'm consistently critical about things in the Catholic Church that I think are wrong. And I would get letters from priests saying, well, I think you should leave the Catholic Church. If you're not so unhappy with it, you should leave. And I said, well, no, I'm not going to leave. You want me to leave to silence me, to shut me up. I'm going to stay. If you got a problem, you leave. Um, but I think that we can't surrender important, valuable, foundational stuff because man or woman leadership has hijacked it and tried to redefine it. I said Sunday at church that religion has built their own golden calves again, and have their own little, kingdoms, and try to redefine Christ, try to redefine the gospel. We've got to go back. Jesus was one of the most radical figures that ever lived.
Yeah.
And we got to go back and challenge the institutions that have hijacked him and redefined him, and say, no, I'm not about to walk away from it. I'm about to take it back and be the voices. And when they find in any denomination a church that is seeking to live that gospel, get connected with that and make that now the model and the power thing to put who's not doing it and the safeness to shame. The church, the mosque, the synagogue ought to be the most dangerous places in the community. And too often they've been made the safest places in the community. Just like you said, not going to take a stand anywhere. We're just going to love God and pray. And no. The church, historically, going back to the time of Christ and looking in the 60s and what Dr. King was, Malcolm was a man of faith. Gandhi was a man of faith. King was a man of faith. Movements that continued and affected transformative change were based on faith. And so we got to take it back. Don't walk away. Take it over. Take it over and make it powerful again.
I love you spoke in your sermon, which I also thought was interesting, about the need for healing within the faith community in St. Sabina. And you even talked about how personally it was necessary for you to forgive and to release anger and bitterness. And I remember thinking, how do you, after 5 months of this, not just 5 months, let's just be honest, after your entire career of fighting the Catholic community, the Archdiocese, all these different people of faith who have come after you time and time again throughout your career, how do you come back and speak to your congregation from a place of love and forgiveness and healing? There's an anger and a righteous anger.
Absolutely.
How do you do that yourself? And then how do you communicate that same spirit to your supporters and parishioners?
Well, a couple of things. That's a great question. Let me try to give a couple of different answers. First of all, I mentioned how I did not want to come back damaged. I did not want to come back so angry or so bitter that's in me, because it's going to affect who I am, how I relate with people. It's like people coming out of a bad relationship and say, well, I don't trust anybody now because the last person hurt me.
Right.
Life, we have to be more in a relationship with our future than our past, and more concerned about our future than our past. I can't change the people that hurt me in the years of my life, but I'm not going to give them the power to control my love, my excitement, my joy, my vision for the future. And it's like it's like you have a sore in your body. As long as it's still raw and open, the pain continues to control you. It's got to heal.
Hmm.
I like all of us, we have scars from things we've been through in our life, but have to let those scars heal and not remain open wounds, because then they control us. And I refuse to let painful moments in my life control me and now direct how I'll act in the future. That I'm going to be a different kind of person now. I'm not going to be as open. I'm not going to be as outspoken. I'm going to put walls up. I'm going to be more guarded. No, no.
Hmm.
I refuse to let things I went through redefine me. And I think we got to do that as individuals. I think we have to do that as human beings. And I think we've got my job as pastor has got to be able to say the irate and the angry and the hurt and the more passive. I'm not going to, one person is going to go to a rally and speak, and another person says, that's just not me, but I'll write a letter. So our mission and our purpose and our what we want to accomplish is the goal. And how we express getting there is going to be different.
Well, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the ministry of Saint Sabina. And right now, summer is beginning, the city is opening up, and it's already um, increased, not just violence. It seems like there's this spirit of lawlessness in the speeding, the running lights, just very reckless kind of behavior that's happening. And it's not just, it's affecting the quality of life
Yeah.
in our communities, where you can't even if you're staying home, you're not even comfortable
Right.
at home. My mother and I were talking about how loud it is. It's just loud
Yeah.
all hours of the night. What do you think can be done about this pandemic that nobody wants to call a pandemic, but the pandemic of violence that is escalating in our communities?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, the target. That we are, and I think we were this before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic, kind of hyped it up. We are a selfish
Hmm.
and we are independent people, and we no longer value the importance of connectedness, of community, of family. That what happens to you affects me. What happens on 78th Street affects what's going on 76th Street. That we are so disconnected from each other. So we live a life now, it's all about me. Um, and if I want to drag race, I want to speed, I want to shoot, I want to stand out in front on a block and play music, that disturbs the whole block. Um, we have become, in my days, the most disconnected, divided, and self-centered culture of America that I've ever seen in my life, because we are disconnected from one another. We don't know the neighbors in our block. We don't look after each other. We
Hmm.
don't take care of each other. And that's why I think that the faith communities really have to be failed in this. And we've got to teach the importance of caring about each other again and taking care of each other again, of not having a blue light on the corner, being the blue lights that look at what's going on in my block and talking and caring to each other. So one of the things I'm going to be saying more and more about in the future and this violence is there's got to be a comprehensive approach. And we got all in about COVID.
Hmm.
Illinois is in. We all in the COVID. We got in this COVID, and we did a good job with that. You know, it wasn't 100%, but most people wearing masks. Most people stayed distant. Most people didn't go to places. We got all in about that. when are we going to get all in about the violence
Mm-hmm.
and about the poverty and about the lack of equity? When are we going to go? We spent billions of dollars and had massive national campaigns
Mm-hmm.
to get people doing something about the COVID,
Yeah.
and it worked. Um, but what's the difference why we do about that and not do about violence in our city, in our country? Because COVID affected everybody. Violence primarily affects Black and brown.
Yeah.
So we're all in to take care of everybody, but when we're not all in because of something that's making Black and brown children extinct, we save the whales, but we don't want to save our children.
Yeah.
And that rooted in the racism and the bigotry and the supremacy that our country is in their bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
When do we face that? When does the government officials, if even if the people of America are not ready for that yet, when do those in leadership say, we're going to go all in this violence thing because it's the right thing to do? And people that don't like it are going to have to get in with it, because this is an American problem, not a West and South Side problem.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, you could go downtown and see one thing and 20 minutes drive out south to 79th and Racine, and it looks like two different countries. And so I think until the faith communities rise up and become once again the prophetic voice and the conscience of an America that's lost her soul, until we become that again, we're just going to see a repeat of this. And here's the other problem that you have to deal with, and your children. You want them to be safe, and yet you also want them not to have to lose their roots of their community.
Exactly.
Because you don't want to have to move to a place where you then say, well, they maybe don't get shot, but they're going to be called the N-word.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're going to be shot or harmed by some supremacist.
Yep.
Who says, why are you, and we've seen that just all in the news, calling a Black person, why are you in this neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you also want them to grow up in the richness of the culture of the Black community and not lose their identity. So it's all these horrible and horrific realities, and we're not addressing them. We keep band-aiding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You don't band-aid cancer. You got to do surgery, and you've got to do the kind of investment and kind of resources to be poured in. Dr. King said something, Danielle, I never forgot. He said, it didn't cost anything to get people vote. It didn't cost anything to allow people to sit at the lunch counters. It didn't cost anything for people to get on the buses and sit anywhere. But to bring equality and equity to the poor and the forgotten and the Black community in this country is going to cost trillions.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not ready to pay the money and foot the bill and do the investment to end that problem. And America feels like she doesn't have to, because America still lives with, well, for the Black or the brown, we'll do one thing and hopefully they'll be satisfied. We've got to rise up with a rage of dissatisfaction of we're not going to take this anymore. And we're going to need white and brown and other communities, like we talked before about Dakota Sounds, for righteous people, wherever they are, whatever race or whatever class they are, to come up and speak up to and say, enough of this.
And that kind of leads me to the theme you talked about, invasion, as being kind of the theme of the faith communities for this year. Can you just go into a little bit of detail about what that means when you say it's time to invade?
I think that we live in a society, and it's kind of some of the things we were talking about, where we've learned to coexist with evil, coexist with disconnectedness. So, yeah, my Black don't know each other, so I just take care of me in my backyard, and I go out of my house and hope I don't get shot, hope I don't get carjacked, hope I don't get robbed. And I got to look after me and mine. We coexist with this evil in society. And I said that coming into this year of invasion, we refuse to coexist. So we're going to invade wherever we are, at my workplace, at the marketplace. So if you, as a black woman, are in a store and somebody says a racist comment to you or says a sexist comment to you, that whoever is around that and heard that should have to speak up before you.
Mm-hmm.
Should say, don't talk to her like that. Don't touch her like that. Don't say that racist thing to her like that. Whether it's a cashier, whether it's another shopper, we have to invade wherever we at to say that wherever we are at, evil cannot rise up around us and not be addressed. In the classroom in school, in the marketplace, at home, with our family, with our stranger, with our relatives, wherever, at our job places, wherever we are, we have to invade it with the presence and the righteousness of God. And if we do that, if we keep waiting for Supreme Court or state or the city or the county to protect us, we're going to die unprotected.
Well, I got to ask one last question. It is the number one question that I was asked throughout the last 5 months about you. And that is, you have gone through so many attacks by your employer, quite honestly.
Yep.
Why did Father Mike stay in the Catholic Church? Why won't he just leave and do his own church? Because they would come. Why does he stay with these people that act like they don't like him?
Well, that's a great question. And I've been asked that 1,000 times. There's a number of answers, but let me give one, probably the main answer. Every time over the years when I have really prayed and said, God, what should I do? Should I go out? And like I said, I have problems with every denomination. I even have problems with the non-denominational because they have their own set of rules and stuff too. And there's problems with all of it, as there's problems in the Catholic Church and things that I vehemently disagree with. But every time I ask God, what should I do? Or should I just leave ministry and do something else? And I've never felt release. People have told me that I'm a thorn in the side of the Catholic Church. And if I'm a thorn, then I'm going to continue to be a thorn. But I've always felt God telling me, keep doing what you're doing and keep speaking what you're speaking and let the chips fall where they fall. I also think that it's been hopefully a teaching for my members that whenever you're faithful, I think, to who you think you're supposed to be, as you try to be faithful, and we all mess up, we all make mistakes, we all fall, you are going to be subject to attack. In the workplace, when you're not just fitting in and going with the crowd and drinking the Kool-Aid, and you start saying, well, no, I don't think we're covering this right, or I don't think we need this story in your business, or in any of the news stations, or in corporate America, or in the classroom, or in the education system. When you begin to speak up and challenge and confront, there'll be people who will turn on you. And for Christians, my thing is that, that's part of the game. Jesus had people turn on him. The Hosannas went to crucify him. He was killed for things he said. And he said, come follow me, pick up your cross. And I think if we're true to what we believe, that's why we have that big sign that hangs on our church, disciples at cost, are you willing? Are you willing to pay the price wherever you're at, in a church, in a denomination, in a job, in a classroom, in a school, with your friends, with your family? Are you willing to pay the price to speak and stand and fight for what you believe? And if you're not, then you don't really believe it. I'll close this one last story. I remember back in early days when we were integrating the schools and the busing program was going on, and I was a young, crazy college student. And I remember one time we were going to integrate a place, and we were all waiting to get on the bus and support those who were doing the integration. Guy says to us all before we get on, if you're not ready to die today, don't get on the bus.
Mm.
And my first thing was, is there another bus? But it made me think. I got on that bus. And I'm not sure I got on because I was ready to die. My pride probably said, I'm not going to walk away. And I got on that bus, and it really caused me to think, do I believe in what I'm doing enough to pay the price? Dr. King got killed for what he believed. He didn't get killed for a dream. He got killed for a plan to achieve that dream. Malcolm, Medgar. Look at Bloody Sunday in Selma. Look at Tulsa. Look at Redwood. Look at Rosewood. Look at the things in our country. And I just think we need to be, as invaders, courageous enough to stay and fight and plant our feet and the things we believe in, and know it's going to cost us. And if we don't and are not ready to pay the cost, then don't get in it, because the last thing we need is punks. We have to be bold. And yeah, we'll make mistakes, and yeah, we'll mess up, and we all can look back and say, God, I should have done this differently, should have done that differently. But if we're trying to do the right thing, I believe God will protect us.
And I know the hits keep on coming, but I just think your strength and not just your strength, but your vulnerability, your willingness to be vulnerable and share. I tell people, Pete, you think pastors and preachers are supposed to be these super strong pillars of faith, but I think it's more impactful when you allow people to see your vulnerability, because then you don't feel as a person whose faith may not be as strong. You don't feel so condemned when you're questioning God. So to hear you say there were days I couldn't talk to God that day. I felt that in my soul. But you don't get to hear that because people do say, oh, you shouldn't say things like that. So I just think it's more impactful, and it reaches more people where they feel like, you know what? It's okay to feel this way. And that doesn't mean I'm less of a Christian.
I appreciate that. That means a lot, because that's what I try to be, is transparent. And I'm not up here. I'm right here struggling with this cross like you are. And let's help carry it with each other.
All right, Father Mike.
Take care of yourself. Bless you.
I appreciate you.
All righty.
All right. Bye-bye.